Yesterday, I had the honor of filming a special needs trust and guardianship workshop. And listen, if you're a parent of a child with special needs, this information you cannot afford to miss. Huge shout out to J.L. Williamson Law Group for breaking everything down perfectly, to Mary Lorza for putting this entire event together, and to Dr. Chris Elkins for always standing strong with our community. The full workshop drops on my YouTube channel, and the audio version will be on my podcast, Autism Through My Eyes. Make sure you follow, subscribe, and share. This is life-changing information for our families. Enjoy.
Well, good morning. Thank you all for coming. My name is Jeffrey Williamson. I am the founder of J.L. Williamson Law Group. Our firm, we have several offices. Our main office is in Savannah off Chatham Parkway. We also have an office in Statesboro and one in Atlanta. And we do a lot of specialty types of estate planning and asset protection. In a former life, I was an IRS agent, which I'm glad I'm not now because they probably hadn't been paid for 2 months. So luckily, I never had to go through a shutdown. But then I started my own firm back in 2010, and we do all kinds of specialty estate planning. We do a lot of elder law, and as part of elder law, we got into Medicaid planning. And I've always done a few special needs trusts along, but we've probably over the last 2 years really made a push to help families with special needs because there weren't really any attorneys around who specialized in that and who did that kind of work. And so what I would leave, I'm not going to turn this into a commercial for our firm. This is purely for informational purposes. What I would tell you is this: if you're going to get legal advice, you need to go to a specialist. I would not go to the person who represented you in your last DUI and say, hey, I need a special needs trust. Okay, next slide. So this is just my disclaimer. This just says this is not binding legal advice. What kind of attorney would I be if I didn't have a disclaimer? Next slide. So as I said, in a former life, I was an IRS agent, so I have my Circular 230 disclaimer. When you practice before the IRS, this just says you can't use anything I say to create a tax shelter or defraud the government. Next slide. So what we're going to talk about is planning for a loved one who has special needs. Really any kind of special needs. And it's going to be with the intent to, they're fixing the mood lighting here. With the intent to qualify or maintain government benefits that you might have. Next slide. So what is part of a comprehensive plan? You've got, of course, financial security, quality of life, protection and advocacy. Do you have a guardianship? Do you not? Continuity of care. Who's going to take care of the loved one, the person with special needs, when the primary caregiver is no longer around? Now, you can have the greatest special needs trust that's ever been drafted. These are other things beyond the trust that you need to think about. Who's going to serve as trustee of that trust when you're not around? And of course, peace of mind. Next slide. So obviously, successful planning. This is where we're going to cover most of our topic today, legal planning. But you do have to think about family support, education and employment, communication and decision making. All of that is important when you're drafting or preparing the legal side of things. Financial planning and life care. Of course, we're going to talk about special needs trust and guardianship mostly. Next slide. So, creating an effective plan. So, if you don't leave here with anything else, I say today, the worst thing you can probably do is nothing. Failure to plan. That's probably the worst thing. So, of course, you have to evaluate where you are in this, where the child, or most of you is special needs children, where they are in their development and what you can and can't do. Next slide. So, again, who's going to plan? Who's going to be there for that child when you're not there? Setting up a trust will ensure some financial security. You also need to set up emotional support and guidance, or think about those kind of things. Next slide. So, what type of benefits are we talking about? You're talking about estimating income and expenses. Are they getting SSI, SSDI? We're going to talk about the differences between the two. Monthly living expenses. Obviously, if there's a shortfall, how are you going to meet that shortfall? How many of you here have heard of ABLE accounts? ABL, 1 or 2? Okay, good. Some of you are going to learn something today. Next slide. So at age 18, a loved one with special needs is an adult. Okay? They are legally an adult. And you lose the right to technically make legal decisions for that person. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I've had this conversation. I've done more and more of this planning with, parents. They have a child. The child may be 30. We had one, Sheila can tell you, 30 years old. Well, why do I need guardianship and conservatorship? Well, you're even though you're their parent, you no longer have technically control over them. If a loved one doesn't have the requisite capacity, of course you have to have guardianship and conservatorship, but there are alternatives. What if you have a relatively high functioning person? Okay, they're not at a situation where when you go and get guardianship and conservatorship over someone, you have to file a petition, go in front of a judge, and prove that this person is not capable. They might be capable enough. So what do you do then? Well, we're going to talk about powers of attorney, having a durable financial power of attorney, having an advanced directive for health care. These kind of things give you the control you need, and is a lot less invasive than doing a guardianship and conservatorship. Next slide. Next slide. Public benefits. So we're going to talk about, we've got means-tested public benefits, SSI and Medicaid. And what I mean by means tested, you can't have but so much money. That's a simple way of putting it, or so much in the way of wealth or resources to qualify. Then you've got other entitlement benefits, SSDI. I mean, you could be worth $100 million and still qualify for SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, and Medicare. Okay, other programs, there is Section 8. If you're a veteran, there are programs for, here we are on Veterans Day. We're not going to cover most of those, but just so you know, there's a lot of military in this area. We do a little bit of VA planning. There are some veterans benefits that are out there. Next slide. Okay, so for SSI, they got to be disabled. What if physically or mentally? Doesn't have to be both. Plus, they have to be indigent. Resource test is measured basically on the first day of each month. Do you meet this requirement? Income test, basically you total any income received. It can't be much, okay? Note, income is counted differently by Social Security Administration than by the IRS. So what the Social Security Administration deems as income, the IRS may exempt as income. Next slide. Okay. Disability for an adult is defined as the inability to engage in any substantial gainful activity, SGA, due to any medically determinable physical or mental impairment. Okay. For a minor, it's defined as a medically determinable physical or mental impairment or combination that causes marked or severe functional limitations. So the definition is a little bit different for adults than it is for children. If you can be mentally sound, but if you can't be gainfully employed for an extended period, then for an adult you're deemed to be disabled. Next slide.
Real quick, for parents in the school system, let's say your child is diagnosed with autism and receives an autism diagnosis from a school psychological. We've had this happen on a couple of occasions, which floored me. I'm not sure how this happened, but we determined eligibility for autism, but they did not have a medical diagnosis of autism. A school psychologist cannot diagnose anything. They can say it looks like autism, it seems like autism, and will serve them in an autistic eligibility in school. But if you go to send that psychological for SSI eligibility or any other type of program, they're going to be like, we want a medical diagnosis, which would not be done through a school psychologist. That would be done for a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or something like that.
An independent doctor, yeah.
Independent doctor outside of the school setting. Just friendly advice about that. Yes, ma'am?
So what are the SSI limits? Give me some numbers. You can only have $2,000 in countable resources. Okay? That's pretty much without getting, this is an overview, pretty much everything is countable. So if you have much of anything, you're going to be over the resource limit. $3,000 for an eligible couple. Not all resources are counted. The home, if you have a home, of course, that's exempt, provided it's worth less than about $700,000. You can have an automobile of any value. We've actually done Medicaid spin down for people, older people who are trying to qualify for ABD Medicaid, and I've actually had clients take cash, which was countable, and buy a car, which was not. Theoretically, you could buy a Ferrari. I'm not recommending that you do that. It's hard to say why you need to be in a nursing home tooling up there in a Ferrari, but I'm just saying theoretically that works. Furniture and clothing, your personal effects, things like that are exempt. Okay, next slide.
Real quick question. This is just county. This is for the person that's applying for the SSI.
Oh yes, a
It's not the parent.
good point. We got the law officer here who's correcting me. Yeah, this is just for the person who's applying for the disability, not the parent. Now, if they're a minor, I mean, they're in your household. How they view that, is a little bit. But yes, it's mainly for the disabled person. Next slide. Types of income: earned income, gifts, payments from annuities, resource. You get reduced benefit for dollar. Earned income, obviously, if you're working and you get earned income, then that can affect your benefits. I don't want to spend too much time because that. Next slide. Okay, types of SSI income: in-kind support and maintenance, actual receipt and shelter, deemed income, someone's actual income, duty to support, parent, child. Sometimes that can reduce benefits dollar for dollar after the first $20. So they can deem income to the child or to the disabled person. Next slide. Okay. 2 tests to qualify for SSDI. Now, SSDI is not means tested. If you've got enough Social Security paid in, enough quarters, you can qualify for this. Still have to have a disability, sufficient work history. There's no resource limit. SSDI benefit is based on the past wages. You can receive at both SSDI and SSI if your wages were low. How do you know if someone's on SSI or SSDI? If they're getting $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 a month, you can bet that's SSDI. I think the cap for SSI, don't quote me, I think is around $900 a month this year. So if it's over that, you automatically know it's SSDI. Next slide. Okay, Social Security disability on parents' work record for individuals. Can a child get it based on a parent's work record? The answer is yes. Got to be disabled before age 22, never worked, never married. Parents who are retired, disabled, or deceased, eligible based on their work record. 50% of a parent's Social Security while living, 75% of a parent's Social Security after death. Social Security benefits will be reduced or eliminate SSI benefits, so you can't double dip, so to speak. Okay? There is no resource test, and you can get Medicare after 24 months. Next slide. I don't want to harp on the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid is obviously means tested. That's why many of you are in here. You want to qualify for those Medicaid benefits, all those health insurance benefits. Obviously, after you've been on it for a while, you get Medicare as well. Next slide. Automatically available with SSI. Okay, you got to apply separately if you're on SSDI. Basically, in most states, Medicaid is modified adjusted gross income Medicaid if income is below 138% of the federal poverty line. And of course, that's adjusted for inflation every year. Next slide. Okay. So I've gone over all these means tests and I've gone over it quickly. Here's the bottom line. If you have a disabled child, they're not able to have a lot if they're wanting to qualify for SSI. That's the whole point. So as we talked about earlier in planning, what are you going to do when your child outlives you and you want to leave them what you've worked and accumulated, or have them be a beneficiary of your retirement plan? your pension, other things. Can they get that? The answer is no. So what I've seen people do, which is a mistake, they've got maybe more than one child. They've got, let's say 2 or 3, quote unquote, normal children or non-disabled children. And they say, I'm going to disinherit the disabled child. And I'm just going to give the assets to his or her brothers or sisters and tell them, hey, take care of your sibling. That is fraught for many reasons. Sometimes, believe it or not, money changes people. That you'd be surprised to know that, right? Secondly, even if everyone has the best of intentions, what if those other children experience life? They get divorced. They have they have a big medical bill and have to file bankruptcy. Another creditor tries to take those assets. Then you've jeopardized the disabled child's resources by not planning correctly. And what we're going to talk about today is a way to leave them resources and not jeopardize their benefits. Okay, next slide. So, not all special needs trusts are created equally or all the same. You've got a third-party trust, okay? So that would be like you, as parents, creating a trust for the child. It's a third party. You're creating a trust for someone other than yourself, your child. Anybody can do it from any sort of funds. You've got really broad limitations. You could put $100 million in a special needs trust for someone and they could still qualify for government benefits. I'm not saying I recommend that. I'm just saying there's not a limitation. Now, what if, and I'm doing this more and more, what if no planning has been done and a child is mistakenly, or they didn't properly plan, a beneficiary in grandma's will or grandma's estate, or the child had an accident, right? There was a lawsuit and they get a big judgment. They get on disability, they get means tested, but all of a sudden they're going to have $500,000, $1 million come. And that's going to disqualify them. You can do what's called a first party special needs trust, sometimes called a D4A trust. That comes from Section 1396 of the Federal Code. You don't need to know that. I just throw that out there so I know what I'm talking about. You got to be disabled before age 65. The individual themselves can create the trust, or it can be done by a parent or guardian. It does have to have a Medicaid payback requirement, meaning, so Stephanie's disabled, she's a disabled child. Unfortunately, grandma left her, let's say $300,000 from her estate, or she got a settlement from a lawsuit, and she's going to lose those benefits. What can she do? Her parent, right, or her guardian, or herself, if she's mentally capable, can put those monies in trust for herself. Okay, this is normally you can't put assets in trust for yourself and protect it from your creditors, but in this case you can. But it does have to have a Medicaid payback rule, meaning that at her death, if there's any money left in that trust, Medicaid gets to be paid back for all the benefits they've provided during her life. Now, do you have to have a Medicaid payback rule in a third-party trust? The answer is no. Have I seen Medicaid payback provisions in third-party trusts? Yes, I have. That is actually malpractice. That's why it's important to go to someone who knows what they're doing. You certainly wouldn't want to put a payback provision in a third-party trust. Finally, we have pooled trust. What if someone's getting only $50,000 or $100,000? Is it really worth the cost to go see the lawyer and get a trust set up and have trustees and all of that? Probably not, but you can do what's called a pooled trust, where you join in with a group that's already been set up. You have like an individual account with this pooled trust, and you get all the benefits of a first-party trust, but without all the cost. Now, once you get over a certain threshold, you're probably going to want to have your own trust for your own child, but a pooled trust is a very good option for many people. How many of you in here had heard of pooled trust before we came? Now it was worth the trip. Next slide. So, best method for inheritance is a third-party trust. Okay, it controls. You have basically, I won't say unlimited, but a wide degree of latitude, any kind of assets. Obviously, the attorney that's drafting it needs to have some expertise in third-party trust. You certainly want to make sure it qualifies. Here's what I've seen a lot. Someone goes and gets a trust drafted, and then they don't get it pre-approved. Do you have to get these trusts pre-approved by the Department of Community Health? Yes, you do. If they're created now, not if they're like in a will and a testamentary trust, but if you set up the trust now and fund it, you have to send it off to the Department of Community Health and you get an approval letter, okay? And then you also are supposed to send a copy of that trust to the local Medicare office where the child or the beneficiary resides. That's what I see missed a lot, okay? You need to know, that's why, I mean, people say, Jeffrey, you charge too much for the special needs trust. Well, there's a lot of extra things you have to do that, that a typical, just a general practitioner is not going to know. Next slide. Okay. Can you set up a third-party trust and have other parents contribute to it? Yes, you can. Okay. Of course, it protects against financial exploitation and undue influence. No requirements to pay the state back. It can be revocable during the life of the grantor and can be updated as needed. So if you want to do an inter vivos, it's a fancy legal word, a lifetime trust, you could have it be revocable during your life and become irrevocable at your death. I don't know that I normally recommend that. I do recommend setting up the trust during life. Why? Because you already get it pre-approved. You know it's approved. You got that stamp of approval, and if Grandma or Aunt Betsy wants to leave money to the disabled child, they can just leave it to that trust, and it's already set up. But you don't have to. It can be, you can have a contingent SNT. Say you do a trust for yourself, a revocable trust to avoid probate. You can have a contingent SNT for that child inside that trust, and that doesn't have to be pre-approved. It only needs to be approved when it's funded. That makes sense? Okay, next slide. Obviously, this is not only for the wealthy. What I would say is, we used to do, well, we still do high-end estate planning for people who were trying to avoid the estate tax. The current exemption is $15 million. So if you're in this room and you're worth more than $15 million, see me after. I got some strategies for you. But I tell clients, look, if you're worth $20 million and you don't plan, and the government takes half and your family only winds up with $10 million, it's not a good day, but you're not in the breadline, right? If you don't plan for your special needs child correctly, let's say you've got $500,000 in total wealth, including a home, or $700,000, and you don't plan for that child, that could really make a very material difference in the quality of life they're going to have when you're not here. So it's especially not for the wealthy, okay? If you're very wealthy, you may not care that they're, I had one family come to see me, they didn't care if the child was on benefits. They were able to just pay for everything. But that's not the norm. Next slide. Okay, how does it work? Okay, you can provide in the trust what's called supplemental needs. You provide benefits to them indirectly. Food, clothing. Can a special needs trust own a house? Yes, it can rent a house. You can take them on vacation, buy them books. The range of things you can do in a supplemental needs trust is pretty broad. Next slide.
Wait, hold on. The slide that you just said that it can pay for food for no benefit.
Yes.
But the slide before that said cannot be used for food. Do not allow payments for beneficiaries' food or shelter. Third bullet.
Back up to the previous slide.
This one? Or
Okay. May pay for all food with no penalty and can pay for shelter items that may cause third-party supplemental needs trust. Yes. Next slide. Okay. Yeah, that's okay.
oh, I think it's saying these are myths about the third party.
Oh, okay.
They do not allow, but they do. Okay, I'm there
Don't
with
question me.
It's
that's
all
a
good.
No, hey, she's reading the slides. So
Really,
let me be clear. These are things that people, I skipped up. She's ruined it for everybody.
Oh, no.
But these are things that you think that you can't use for, and you absolutely can. You absolutely can. Do you have to do it if someone's on public benefits? What if you have a child that's not on SSI or SSDI, but they're still maybe mentally handicapped or have some issue? You might consider a third-party S&T just to protect them from themselves. Okay, that's just, yes. But good catch. I'm glad you're reading the slides. You can pay for food. You can take them on vacation. You can. The range is broad. Here's what you really can't do. Let's talk about what you can't do. You can't give them just outright money. You can't say, "Here, Johnny, here's $500. Go buy yourself some sneakers," okay, or whatever. You can go buy the sneakers from the money with the trust and then give it to the beneficiary, to the child. Next slide. So we've talked about outright inheritance versus disinheritance. I don't want to repeat that, but disinheritance is probably the worst thing to do. I'd rather you leave the money, the child get his or her share, and us have to do a first-party special needs and clean up after the fact, than you just outright disinherit them. Just because I've seen it, it works well in theory, but life happens, and I've seen it go bad a lot of times. The siblings, for whatever reason, can't work it out over a period of 15, 20, 30 years. Next slide. Okay. Who's going to be the trustee? This is the key question, right? Who's going to be the trustee of the trust? Is it the person that's also the caregiver of the beneficiary, the disabled person? It doesn't have to be. You can have a corporate trustee. There are financial firms that specialize in being trustees of special needs trust. It can be the caregiver, but it doesn't have to be. If you know someone, hey, they're real good with my son or daughter, they're not exactly the most financially savvy, you can separate those roles. You can have someone who's the trustee and who, for lack of a better term, doles out the money or pays the bills, and you can have the caregiver. Can they be one and the same? Yes, they can. But that needs to be a very mature and responsible person, okay? And that maturity and responsibility and conscientiousness are at a scarcity in our society. Yes, sir.
Now, that's a lot of the questions I get about that trustee. Do you pay a monthly thing for the trustee if you give somebody that right to do that? Not somebody. I'm not talking to somebody you know. I'm talking about like corporate.
So it depends on. So the question is, who pays for the trustee? What if the trustee is a professional trustee, a bank or something like that? If it's a pooled S&T, the fees are usually very low because they're just managing a small account. If it's a large enough account, let's just say you make, so what I've seen a lot is with a third party, you have a big life insurance policy, let's say on the parent caregiver, right? And at their death, that life insurance pours into that special needs trust, that third party supplemental needs trust. If it's enough of an investable asset, I mean, basically what the financial advisor or the trustee is going to do is just charge a percentage of the assets. And it can be as low as 1%, depending on, but they're going to have certain thresholds. They're not going to let you come in with $50,000 and do it. You know, usually the cutoff is, say, $500,000. But they have their schedule of fees, but it's usually a percentage of assets under management. That's why you need to be careful what kind of assets you fund. Okay, if you have a small business, you have a, let's say, just to pick a business at random, a used car dealership, you're not going to be able to leave that probably in a special needs trust because you're not going to find a trustee who's going to manage the car dealership then to make the money to pay for the child. Yes?
Can you have multiple trustees?
Oh, our lawman here is savvy.
Good question.
So, this is a long answer, but we blame it all on the federal lawman. The short answer is yes. You can have multiple trustees. And sometimes that works, but you need to be very careful about that. Because once you add, it all sounds good when you're sitting in a lawyer's office. Yeah, let's just have 3 trustees and they'll all vote and, we'll decide together. But that's cumbersome over time, right? Are those 3 people going to be around and show up and make decisions? So normally I do not recommend trustee by committee. Okay, what I normally do in our trust is we will have a primary trustee, and if that person can't serve, then a backup. And that's normally, I don't want to say always because every situation is different. That's normally what I recommend. And you can put provisions in a trust to have a trust protector, like a professional person. We always put that can remove the trustee if they, commit malfeasance or something. But the short answer to your question is yes, you can have more than one trustee. You just need to be aware of the administrative friction that might create. Next slide. Okay. So why might you want to have multiple trustees? This is all the things that an ideal supplemental needs trust person would be able to have. I won't go through all this list, but you see it's quite long. Not many people embody in one person all of these things. So you just need, and being the trustee of a supplemental needs trust or special needs trust is, I would say, one of the most difficult jobs you can have because you're dealing with a lot of regulatory issues, you're dealing with a lot of emotional issues, public benefits issues, tax issues with the trust. So you got to be very careful who you pick. Next slide. So can you have a management team, trust advisory committee? Yes, you can. And these are just things to look for. I put here the trust protector, either a family member. We don't normally designate, our firm doesn't serve as trust protector, but we would designate someone. I have the ability to designate a trust protector if we need to have one. You're looking at me kind of confused. What is a trust protector? Suppose you follow my advice and you name a primary trustee and a backup trustee, and the beneficiary outlives both of them. Now we got a trust with no trustee. What are you going to do then? Well, if you don't have provisions in a properly drafted trust, you're going to have to go to court, okay, Superior Court, and get a new trust, get judicial modification and a new trust appointed. If you have trust protector provisions, you can have someone like me at our firm designate another person, like a CPA, to serve as trust protector and then appoint a trustee, a new trustee, and you can do all of that without going to court. Guess which is smoother and quicker and less expensive? But you just need, obviously, having the ability privately to appoint a new trustee, you just need to think about, do you want to have these provisions in your trust? Next slide. Okay, I've gone over the benefits of having a trust protector. I don't think we keep going. What can an SNT pay for? Back to our question, food or not food? So ignore the other slide, read this slide. Okay. S&T can pay for anything that's not illegal or against public policy. That's pretty broad. That's pretty broad. All right. However, some expenditures may affect the beneficiary's government benefits. Cash directly to the beneficiary, not a good idea. As a matter of fact, a very, very bad idea. Okay. Buying countable assets like a second vehicle, distributing them to the beneficiary. Hey, I saw a new BMW X6. I'd like for my child to have it. I'm going to buy it with this trust money and then title it in their name. Not a good idea. Okay. Is the expenditure fair market value or otherwise reasonable? If you're self-dealing with the trust, borrowing, that's not a good idea. But other than these small things here, I say small, they're important, but it's a very limited group of transactions that you can't do. You can do a lot for them. As I said, food, which we've talked on, clothing, vacations. You want to take, there was, I don't recommend this, but there was, I know from the people at Department of Community Health that approved these trusts, one of the trustees bought up several guns for the beneficiary. I don't recommend it, but it wasn't thrown out. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question for like accommodations. So my child
Okay?
They have special needs trusts, and they use those funds for modification of the home or a modification vehicle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to, they need a van to, haul for them to travel? Absolutely. They need any kind of durable medical equipment like that, construction on the home. The trust can actually own the home, So, next slide. Okay, so how much should you fund? Is equal the same thing as fair? Ask yourself that. Most people fall into, I'm going to treat all my kids equally. Everybody's getting a third. You got 3 kids, or everybody's getting half. Or fund loved ones with special needs more because they're unable to work. I've seen it both ways. I'm not telling you what to do. I will say this, that the families that I've seen that actually give more to the special needs child, if they tell the other children, hey, your brother, your sister doesn't have all the tools you have. I'm going to leave them a little bit more help. I've never seen it, I'm not saying it hasn't been, but I've never seen it be a problem in my practice, personally, as long as it was disclosed up front to everybody, okay? But what you do is what you do. Life insurance is good funding. What about retirement assets? Here's a benefit, a trust. So if you have a 401k or an IRA and you leave that to a child, without getting into too complicated, the exceptions in the tax code, basically they've got 10 years to draw it out. They've got to draw it out under something called the Secure Act within 10 years. If it's a disabled person, or if it's the right kind of special needs trust, they can draw it out during their lifetime. Their whole life, they get to what you might call stretch those payments out. So it might be a good idea, right, to fund, if you have a big retirement plan, leave that to the special needs trust. Let the special needs trust be the beneficiary. And if you wanted to supplement for your other children, replace that with life insurance. So that's just an idea, but something to think about, right? If I've got $1 million in a retirement plan and I got to give it to you today, you're going to get bracket run, right? Run up the tax bracket. But if I can dole it out to you, let's say the child is 25 at your death, hypothetically, if I can dole it out to you for the next 35 or 40 years, taxes on that are going to be much, much lower. Just something to think about. Next slide. So we've talked about the first party trust. The main thing you need to leave here knowing, this lady's taking pictures. There's no picture. I'm kidding. The main thing you need to leave here knowing is that if someone gets a large sum of money, a windfall we'll call it, there are options available. The worst option is don't do anything, spend down till you're broke, and then get back on public benefits. That's the worst option, and that is the other options are open to you. And the first party trust is definitely the way to do that. Next slide. Okay, first party trust, as I've said, and when we talk about first party trust, we're talking about allowing the child or the disabled person to put assets that they've already received, okay, they've already got the money or they're already entitled to the money, in trust for themselves, okay, or allowing their parent or guardian to do it. It's usually done when we haven't done any other kind of planning. But, to borrow a phrase, it sure beats nothing. It sure beats nothing. Next slide. Okay, so most of you in here had not heard of ABLE accounts. So Congress enacted these special kind of accounts that you can put money in for a disabled person and it's not counted against them. Remember we talked about what they can have as countable resources? Money in the ABLE account is not counted. Next slide. One account per individual can only be opened by a beneficiary or an authorized individual. Do not have to be receiving SSI to be eligible. Individual participating in an employer-sponsored retirement plan are not eligible to open or add to an account. Okay, so you can't do it through your retirement plan. Funding can come from an individual, others, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, others, Or if you have a 529 plan, if you created a 529 college savings plan, you can roll it into an ABLE account. Maximum account sizes differ by state. But usually it's about $5,000 a year is what you can put into an ABLE account. And that's another way to save or to protect assets without going through the expense of actually setting up a trust. Well, I'm running short on time here. I hope this has been beneficial and informative for you. There is a handout that I've given to everybody on special needs trust. You can take it and look at it at your leisure.
We're good on time, sir. We got more if you need be, or do you have to go?
Well, I didn't know. I thought I was going to wrap up around 10 o'clock. So I wanted to take, well, okay. Well, let me, does anyone have any questions thus far?
I've got a question about the ABLE account.
You're at your limit. No, go ahead.
Can you go to any bank and just say, I want to open up an ABLE account? How does that work?
Okay, I don't take practical questions. I just deal with the theory of, no. So his question is, hey, how do you open up one of these ABLE accounts? So most financial institutions, I'm not saying you can't find a bank somewhere that won't do it, but most banks will, you walk in and you tell, the person that's there, that opens accounts that you want to do an ABLE account, they'll allow you to do it. Your financial advisor, if you deal with someone like Edward Jones or Raymond James or Merrill Lynch, they're able to do it. Okay, if you already have where you already have your retirement plan, Fidelity, if they're handling the 401k for the school, you may talk to them about a resource to do that. Any other questions? Yes, sir, in the back, in the red beret. I like that.
Thank you. I've got three disabled kids. Do you use individual trust or two-in-one group trust for all three?
Excellent question. Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. I'm going to get you tit for tat today. What are the ages of the children?
15 right now. The other two are twins and they're 4.
Okay. So his question was, Jeffrey, I've got 3 disabled children. Can I have one common trust? Let's call it a pot trust for everybody. Or should I have separate trusts? What I would say is during your life, it probably can be a common trust if you want to set it up. But there's a lot of difference between 15 and 4, right? I mean, let's run the clock forward. That 15-year-old is going to be going to be retiring much sooner. Than there's 11 years. That's quite a bit of difference. So the financial needs of it, the 15-year-old is going to be going through college soon. When the 4-year-olds are going to be going through college, the 15-year-old may be working or whatever. So that's quite a bit of age gap. What I would say is, if it were me, if you're funding the trust, it's going to be funded mostly after your death. I would have 3 separate trusts for each person. Because let's take the financial advisor. Let's say you have a life insurance policy, and let's just say it's $500,000 at your death. You're the financial advisor. Are you going to invest for the 15-year-old, or are you going to invest for the 2 4-year-old twins? They don't have the same needs. They don't have the same lifespan. And so it makes it difficult to plan. If you've got 3 separate trusts, then you don't get into that conundrum. There was another question. Yes, ma'am.
We set up a special needs trust for our daughter at least 5 years ago.
Okay.
Some things have changed. Is it, do we go back and revise it or edit it or?
So the question is, she set up a special needs trust for their daughter about 5 years ago, and things have changed. So if the trust is revocable, you can just go back to a competent attorney and amend or do a full restatement of the trust. What if the trust is irrevocable? Does irrevocable mean you can't change it ever? So the trusts we draft normally are irrevocable. I like to do that for asset protection, but we allow trusts to be what is called decanted. So just like you decant liquor, you pour it out of one jug into another. You can literally decant a trust, and you can do that privately. If the trust is irrevocable and it doesn't have decanting provisions, you can always go to court and get judicial modification. So I'd have to see the trust to let you know, but you probably do have options. Okay, and normally I try to draft in as much flexibility as I can because life changes, things change, circumstances change, right? What if, I've had this happen, what if someone is disabled, they're physically disabled now, but later they are not? Do you want to have trust termination provisions? I always put that in my trust, that if the person is no longer disabled, it doesn't mean the trust goes away, but it just switches to it can be switched to a general needs trust. Other questions? Yes, sir.
On the ABLE account, do they track where the funding comes from? Like if I put $1,000 into an ABLE account, is there
That you got at the craps table in Vegas, you mean, from a black one? No.
No, but if I have a grandmother or something who just wants to put $1,000 in there, where did the $1,000 come from? And then is the IRS do I have to report that? What's that?
So you're limited in how much you can put in annually. You can put it in, yeah. So where it comes from is really not an issue, and it's not going to be over. It's not going to exceed. If it came from the grandmother, it's a gift, and any gifts, the annual gift exclusion is $19,000 per person, per individual. So that there wouldn't be any reporting on that. But they're trying. It's just the total limit. Is you can't put more than that from wherever. Any other questions before we move on? Did you? Oh, I thought that was my office manager motioning to me.
I want to talk about guardianships.
Oh, yeah.
Powers of attorney.
See, I don't go anywhere without Sheila anymore. So, next slide. Keep going.
I think yep.
Okay, what about when your child becomes 18? We talked about this. 15 years old, not long, okay? And they'll no longer be, what can you do? Next slide. So, they may qualify at loved one with special needs as legally an adult. You still may still qualify. They still may even have to register for selective service. Next slide. Okay. If the person is relatively high functioning, what I would recommend to do is get a durable financial power of attorney. And in Georgia, we have what's called an advanced directive for health care for that person. Not all powers of attorney are created equally. Again, all due respect to other kinds of attorneys, I would not go to the attorney that represented you in your last DUI and say, hey, I need a durable power of attorney for my disabled child. Most of the powers of attorney that we draft, especially with elder law planning or public benefits planning or for a special needs child, has special provisions in it to allow you to do lots of other things. What about creating trust? What if you need to create a trust for them later on in life? If they're already an adult, you couldn't give me a power of attorney over you, and then I could use that power of attorney to create an irrevocable trust, special needs trust, or any other kind of trust, unless that power of attorney has certain special language in it. A general power of attorney is not going to give you everything that you might need. And with a power of attorney, let me just say, it's better to have a power and not need it than to need it and not have it. Okay? What if the person doesn't have the capacity to sign a power of attorney? Well, then you're left to go to court and get guardianship and conservatorship. And if that's if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. Then you're going to have to file annual reports with the court as to what you've done with that person's money. If you need to do a trust for them, you're going to have to file a petition with the court to say, hey, I want to put their money in a special needs trust. Now, I've never had that be denied, but I would just tell you, anytime you have to go to court, you don't have control. Somebody else is making the decision. So you want to have as much control as you possibly can. Okay? Next slide. We talked about health care. There's two kinds of, in Georgia, there's guardianship and conservatorship. Guardianship is guardianship over the person, and conservatorship is controlling their money. You can have guardianship over someone and not have a conservator appointed. If you've already put assets in trust and they don't have any resources, but you still need to have control, you might just file for guardianship and not worry about conservatorship. Yes, sir.
Which one covers like the healthcare and insurance, stuff like that? Because like, I have a TRICARE being retired, and he's covered under it right now. When he turns 18, they're gonna cut him off unless I do something.
Okay, so control over healthcare decisions, if you do it would be done through an advanced directive for healthcare. If you have to go to court, it would be under guardianship. Yeah. Conservatorship just deals with their money. All right.
So advanced directive of healthcare, we keep them on our insurance for longer?
No, so this is good. Suppose the child is over, let's say 21. And you've been tracking their medicine, you go with them to the doctor, you call the doctor and the doctor talks to you. Once that child is over 18, there's something called HIPAA. I won't tell you what HIPAA stands for, but it's medical privacy. And the doctor will come to you and say, I know you've been taking care of him or her, but you don't get to know nada because they're now an adult. Okay, the advanced directive for healthcare just will allow the doctor to talk to you and interact with you just as if you were their parent of a minor child. You definitely should have one. You definitely, if the child can sign. And that doesn't mean they don't have to be a natural genius to execute an advanced directive. It just means they have enough competency. Do they know generally what they're doing? They're giving mom or dad power over their medical decisions. Can they sign their name? Okay. Some probably, some in this room you have children that can't, but some of you probably have children that probably can. And I always like to pick the least invasive alternative first before we go, spend all the money and go to court.
And they have to be 18 for this? Or can they do it when they're 17?
I would wait till they're 18.
How long roughly does it take for guardianship once you start the process?
Well,
Oh, dear.
as the poet would say, I got to wrap up. I'm going to take this as my last question. We'll end on a bang. Therein lies the rub. In Bryan County, we have a pretty good probate judge. Probably, let's say 90 days, okay, or less.
So you should start applying before they turn 18.
I mean, you
What
might.
happens if you wait till they're 18 and there's something while you're in the business?
Well, that theoretically could happen. I probably would wait till they're 18. Now, if you're in Chatham County, I would start when the child is 10. So Chatham County is its own state. But generally speaking, it doesn't. What I wouldn't do is wait. Here's what I wouldn't do. When the child turns 18 and you apply, I think you're way ahead of the game for most people. Here's what I wouldn't do. Do nothing. Wait till the child is 22 or 23. God forbid gets in a car wreck or has an accident and you don't have anything in place. That's the main takeaway. Everybody's worried about that 1 millisecond right after they turn 18. I want to make sure I got that guardianship. I wouldn't worry so much about that. I would just make sure you have something in place or a process in place. You just don't want years to go by,
I have one quick other question I get from a lot of parents. For guardianship, can it be dual guardianship or does only one parent have guardianship?
Oh, that was my
So
question.
yes,
There we
you
go.
can have.
Does it matter on the county? Because I heard it depends on where you file.
But what if we don't want the other biological parent to have, because he's an asshole, who's an idiot?
So here's how guardianship. So to answer your question, can you have more than one guardian? Can you have what let's call it co-guardians or co-conservators? The answer is yes, you can. You have to put it in your petition. Okay. If you don't, let's say I'm representing. Tell me your first name.
Maggie.
I'm representing Maggie, and Maggie says, Jeffrey, my child is over 18. I don't get along hypothetically with her father, and what are we going to do? Well, we prepare the petition for Maggie to be sole guardian and conservator. We file that petition in court, but we'll have to serve the other parent. And if there's a battle, then you just have a hearing in probate court, and the judge will make a decision. Okay? Can you say, look, I can't stand this person so bad, if you don't want to appoint me, just appoint a third party. Have the county administrator be the guardian or conservator. Yes, you can. You can. Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us a roundabout estimate on the cost setting up a special needs trust and revising trust and guardianship?
You have to pay for quality. There's no substitute for quality. So when I gave this presentation, I didn't want to turn this into an advertisement for my firm. So if you see me after, what I will say is we generally, if someone sees us, there's no cost generally for the initial consultation. So when someone comes to see me, normally I'll meet with them for 45 minutes or so, and then I can usually quote a flat fee or a fee range. All right.
I had parents email. I've collected about 3 or 4 questions, so I'm sorry.
Okay.
You can bill me. It's okay.
All right. My hourly rate is $6.85 an hour.
Woo! Okay, checks in the mail.
Okay.
All right, here we go. We already did the pros and cons of having both parents, so we covered that. Let me read this verbatim. Under what circumstances would a conservator be required? We have a standalone, irrevocable special needs trust for my son, and my husband and I are both listed as trustees. Our son has no assets in his name, and we have not yet filed for SSI for him. So she was wondering, under what circumstances would a conservator be required?
So you might not, if they're going to file for SSI, somebody's going to have to handle those payments.
Okay.
Okay, so you probably would need a conservator then. But let's just take the SSI out of it. If you got a standalone supplemental needs trust, and you're not filing for benefits, or you don't want the benefits, would you need a conservator under that circumstance? No, because what is there to conserve?
Yeah.
The person doesn't have any assets. The whole point of conservatorship that is to conserve the assets of the ward. That's what they call the person is the proposed ward. If they don't have it, then there's nothing there to do.
Okay.
And that's why a trust can be a powerful thing, because you're not in court, dealing, filing accountings and all of that.
Okay. Another parent asked, do we need to list my son's ABLE account anywhere? There's less than $4,000 in it at this time, and if so, where? And she's asking this in relation, they're applying for adult guardianship. So I think this is on the adult guardianship, like they're doing the paperwork. Do we need to list his ABLE account anywhere? It's less than $4,000 in it, and if so, where?
Well, if you're applying for guardianship, there's no financial information. If they're applying actually for conservatorship, you probably would list that account on the conservatorship petition. Okay. Guardianship is control over the person, like the medical decisions, where they go, what they do. Can they visit their ne'er-do-well father? That's guardianship, okay? Conservatorship is, I've gotten control of their money. What am I going to spend it on? Because once someone gets guardianship and conservatorship, they can't make decisions for themselves on their own. The state has taken that right away. You are acting for them. I would recommend not doing guardianship and conservatorship without some kind of legal counsel. Let me just say that you file, the way it works, you file a petition and you go to court. But this is not something you want to do pro se on your own. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you've learned something. I enjoyed it.
Is it, Jeff, thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you.